morning, everyone, and welcome to our Metro Board activities for October 13th, 2022. Before we begin, I'll ask our Chief Safety Officer, Ms. Teresa Impastato, to provide us with a brief safety contact.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. During fall, the Washington, D.C. area is subjected to various safety hazards in the form of rain, winds, localized flooding, and leaves. With all this precipitation, safety concerns can and do arise for employees and our customers. Metro platforms, escalators, cars, and bus surfaces can become wet and potentially lead to slip and fall injuries. Being able to safely navigate all of Metro's vehicles and facilities is always paramount, especially during the fall months. Here are some tips for safely navigating the system during the season. Plan extra time for your trip, as inclement weather can disrupt transit. Metro generally operates normally in this season, but service changes may occur. Metro Bus may operate on detours to avoid hills where there is excessive leaf accumulation and other safety hazards such as standing or pooled water. Metro Access will modify service as roadway and walkway conditions require. When navigating through rail stations, escalators, platforms, and buses, watch your step, do not rush, and pay attention to weather conditions and any wet floor signs in facilities. Use extra caution when walking on exposed surfaces, including parking lots, platforms, and bus stops. Never run for a bus or train. If you're traveling with children, hold their hand. Report any unsafe conditions or concerns to any Metro employee, including station managers or bus operators. For additional information, see the severe weather section of the Rider Guide at WMATA.com. This concludes our safety contact.
Thank you, Ms. Impastato. Good morning again, and welcome to today's Safety and Operations Committee. Since this is our first public meeting of the day, I'll ask Ms. Ellison, our Board Corporate Secretary, to call the roll.
Thank you. Chair Drummer.
Here.
Vice Chair Martin Proctor. Mr. Smedberg.
Present.
Dr. Lowe.
Present.
Ms. Klein.
Present.
Mr. Letourneau.
Present.
Ms. Babers.
Present.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Ellison. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any objections by members of the committee to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as presented. Now to approval of our minutes from our September 8th meeting. Are there any objections to the minutes by members of the committee? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as well. We have three information updates on the agenda this morning. First, our Chief Safety Officer, Ms. Teresa Impastato, will provide an update on Metro's partnership with MITRE, highlighting actions in the safety culture domain. In the second update, Ms. Andrea Burnside will review our fiscal year 2022 performance report with a focus on safety, service quality, and financial performance. In the third presentation, our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Brian Dwyer, will provide an update on initiatives to improve customer service. At this time, I'll turn the floor over to Ms. Impastato.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As part of our SMS implementation, WMATA was proud to be the first transit agency to partner with MITRE, a recognized leader in safety risk management headquartered in McLean, Virginia, to enhance our efforts. WMATA has been working closely with MITRE to coordinate the conduct of a safety culture assessment as our first step in the process. Based upon information from this assessment, Metro will subsequently refine our employee engagement strategy to improve our voluntary safety reporting programs and processes. This is meaningful progress implementing our safety management system in accordance with our strategic plan and federal requirements. The safety culture assessment includes a multifaceted approach to dimension our safety culture across multiple domains. The outcome of assessing our safety culture will be the establishment of WMATA's safety culture baseline against MITRE's 4-level safety culture maturity model. This yardstick will clearly indicate to everyone exactly where we are when it comes to our safety culture maturity and help inform the actions we need to take to continuously improve our culture. As we progress along the spectrum, we will continue to develop improvements to the specific dimensions of safety culture and take actions to increase the consistency across the overall organization. Approximately 24 months later, the assessment will be taken again, enabling us to assess the progress that we've made against our original baseline. The graphic at the right of this slide demonstrates a notional placement upon the model. Metro will better understand our position later this year, and we will work to identify targeted action plans to address opportunities to remove barriers and strengthen enablers to a positive safety culture. This assessment has been supported by Metro's Joint Labor Management Safety Committee. As part of conducting the survey, which is our first step, we had an unprecedented level of support, collaboration, and leadership from all Metro's labor organizations, which enabled us to break down barriers with our workforce and encourage participation. The survey has been completed with an over 20% response rate, which exceeds the target established for response per department and provides an excellent margin of error with a 95% confidence interval. This safety culture survey represents a paradigm shift towards quantitative and qualitative safety culture measurement in the organization. The customization of the survey was led by Metro's Joint Labor Management Safety Committee and included input from key stakeholders to develop and deploy the survey. The survey measures safety across 10 dimensions to identify opportunities to mature and harmonize our shared risk perception, attitudes, and behaviors relative to safety across the agency. The Joint Labor Management Safety Committee is overseeing the process of the assessment and evaluation of options to improve our programs in pursuit of enabling improvement. Metro believes that this level of engagement with our labor partners will lead to an environment of co-creation, which enables critical buy-in and participation at all levels of the agency. It is worth noting that this role for the Joint Labor Management Safety Committee, while exceeding the requirements of the VIL regulation, is vital at Metro to ensure the success and sustainability of our transformation efforts. Having completed the survey, we're now progressing to conducting a series of dedicated focus groups to contextualize the quantitative results of the survey and provide additional data in the pursuit of best practices and action options. As part of the General Manager's Strategic Transformation Plan, we're aligning the timelines for action to assure continuity and integration of our efforts with the planning that is currently underway. By year end, Metro will have fully completed the safety culture assessment, reviewed findings and recommendations with staff, and incorporated action plans into our 2023 Safety Management System Roadmap. I look forward to briefing the board on the results of the assessment and our path forward as we transform and improve the culture at Metro, moving from reactive safety risk management to proactive safety risk management. This concludes our update on our partnership with MITRE, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you, Ms. Impastato. Really appreciate the discussion of the levels 1 through 4 and the dimensions that are laid out in this program. Very promising. I do have one question with regard to one of the charts on slide number 4. It showed in levels 1 and 2, and it appears as though we've completed those tasks. I would suggest or ask for feedback on whether what we really mean is we've really accomplished the majority of them, but these are evolving. We can still make adjustments and changes. Some of those, some of the criteria that we have for levels 1 and 2.
Absolutely. The graphic is notional at this point. We haven't fully completed the assessment. This is just where we are currently in the assessment. Level 1 notes that our policies and procedures support safety. Metro has a long-standing history. The efficacy of that support is something that we can continuously improve. Once you've matured and stepped from one level to the next, it doesn't mean that an agency can't take a step back. And that's something that we want to be ever vigilant to ensure that we continue moving forward. And when needed, implement any additional actions to continue to strengthen and continuously improve the foundation of the prior levels.
Thank you very much. So I'll turn the floor over. Are there any committee members with questions or concerns? Dr. Lowe?
Just a couple quick notes. First, I think it would be incredible if the board and the public could hear directly from the Joint Labor Management Committee at some point. I know that we don't have time for every single little thing, so I understand if we can't make this happen, but I think that I think this would be really worth trying to make happen. And then second, I just wanted to make sure I understood the timeline for, okay, survey's done, we're assessing, and then there's going to be an action plan It sounded like that will reach the board and the public in the first quarter of next year. Was that correct?
Yes, so the focus groups are currently ongoing right now, and this overall path forward is something that we're going to incorporate into the general manager's SDP. So while this specific piece may be a little early in terms of its arrival, and we may be able to speak about it earlier, we want to ensure that it's part of the comprehensive path forward. We anticipate in January that we will be presenting the revised 2023 SMS roadmap, and we'll include some of the tactical action plans that are created as a result of this assessment.
Okay, I think everyone's really just going to look forward to hearing that, because it is really wonderful to be able to see the progress that we're making on safety, and it helps people understand that progress when we see how concretely the roadmap is evolving.
Thank you. Any comments from other board members? Okay. So at this time, we'll transition to Ms. Andrea Burnside.
Good morning, Chair Drummer, members of the committee and board. Andrea Burnside, Vice President of Operations, Budget, Performance, and Planning within the Operations Group. And to my left here, also joining me, is Jordan Holt. She's the Director of Performance Improvement. Her group of analysts does all the heavy-duty analytical work and prepares the report that you're about to see today. So she's also here to answer any questions that you may have on the material, and to provide some context for the ridership element that I'll be discussing. So let's advance the slide here. Excuse me. So Metro first began publicly reporting performance results for key operational measures way back in 2010, 12 years ago. And today's presentation continues that tradition of transparency. We thank you in advance for your focus on performance. The Q4 FY22 report highlights performance on a suite of KPIs that evaluate how well the agency is delivering its mission and meeting the standards for safety and service for the time period of July 2021 through June 2022. And generally, these KPIs follow industry standards and align to the Federal Transit Administration's Public Transportation Safety Plan. So the results for FY22 show that we do have opportunities to improve to meet customer expectations and improve their overall satisfaction with our service. Some key drivers of satisfaction that you can see up here on the slide that we'll be walking through today are wait times, trip reliability, crime and safety, and asset availability. When we can achieve strong performance in these areas, satisfaction follows, and in turn, ridership increases. This slide displays the specific pages in the report where the details can be found for each of these drivers, as well as ridership. Overall, the details in the performance report show that across the year we met 19 out of the 28 performance targets. Kind of further broken down in the area of safety, we met 10 of the 12, in reliability 7 of 11, and in financial responsibility 2 of 5. So now I'll walk through each of these, starting with customer satisfaction. So what is this? The percent of respondents to our customer survey who rate their last trip on Metro bus or rail within the previous 30 days as satisfactory. While we started the year with great results in Q1, which is the bar on the chart to the far left of your screen, and that's in the rail side, and on the bus side, the chart on the right to the far left, we were at 87%. So 91% for the first quarter in rail and 87%. We got the year off to a great start. But by the end of the fiscal year, in Q4, we stood at 69% for both bus and for rail, not meeting our overall target for the year. What happened in quarters 2, 3, and 4? For rail service frequencies, we had to reduce them when our 7000 series rail cars were removed from service. And then for bus, our COVID-related operator shortages in January meant that we had to make service reductions, and those all directly impacted how satisfied our customers were. The good news is that the Q1 results provide a blueprint for what we need to do to get back to high satisfaction. We need to provide good quality, all-day frequent service that's reliable with low crowding. In the agenda item today, following this presentation, our Chief Safety Officer, Brian Dwyer, is going to share some initiatives underway with regard to customer excellence. All right, next slide. So as I mentioned, the drivers of satisfaction, one is wait times. Wait times are a top concern, so let's see how we did. So for Metro Rail, as shown in the top row of this slide, service frequency starting in October 2021 was significantly reduced due to removal of the 7000 series rail cars, as I stated. Train frequencies were essentially cut in half, doubling the wait times for customers. The lowest performance during the year was in November, the first full month after suspending the 7K cars, and then in January when the winter weather typically causes additional challenges for us. By February of 2022, we had increased service frequency on all lines. In the middle box of the top line of the chart, we show that by last month, we had reintroduced a limited number, up to 20, of 7000 series trains daily, leading to better service frequency on all lines. For example, customers traveling in the core of the system experience a range of 5 to 8 minutes wait time. Our goal is to continue improving frequency during the weekday peak as we can with the introduction of more rail cars. Looking at the bottom line of the graphic for Metrobus, we made big improvement to service frequencies with the establishment of the frequent service network. On 20 bus lines, we provide 12-minute service most of the day, and on 16 bus lines, 20-minute or better service. We also restored or improved another 46 bus routes. The bus network redesign, as you know, is underway, and that's going to reimagine our service, with one of the guiding principles adopted by the board being to attract customers with frequent, reliable, and connective service. Okay, let's move to the next driver of satisfaction, trip reliability. Customers want low wait times that are consistently and reliably delivered. Let's look at rail first. This slide shows how we did for two rail key performance indicators, namely customer on-time performance, which you could see in the bottom left, and fleet reliability in the bottom right of the chart. Each of these charts shows two things. In the dark blue bars, you could see the 3-year performance trends, FY20 to 22, and in the lighter grayish blue bars, you could see the FY22 broken down by the quarters 1 through 4. On-time performance did not meet target, as you can see from the red bar. This was primarily due, again, to the 7000 series fleet removal. Before that fleet was removed in October of 2021, we had achieved 91.5% on-time performance, which you could see in the lighter bar for Q1, almost at our target for the year of 92%. Fleet reliability is also a key driver of on-time performance. It did meet target for overall for the year. That was driven by a very strong Q1. Q1 kind of held the day for the entire year, while we still had the 7000 series in service. These newer rail cars are much less prone to brake, door, propulsion, and other failures that we see in our 40-year-old rail cars. Those now represent 80% of our service provided. All that said about older rail cars, the maintenance team did a really outstanding job keeping these cars going with stronger inspections, maintenance practices, and different engineering programs to address some of the failure-prone components. The oldest 2 and 3000 series legacy fleets deliver the best performance that they have in decades, an average of 18,000 mean distance between failure. Priorities for this year, as indicated here, are to get more rail cars into service while expanding our system and building new connections. Let's move to bus. Both bus on-time performance in the bottom left chart and fleet reliability on the bottom right chart met targets. Like the rail chart, the blue bars show the 3-year trend for each. On-time performance was 77% for the year, and fleet reliability was 8,918 miles between failure. This is the second best fleet result recorded. Considering on-time performance, roadway congestion is one of the key reasons for buses being late. We see the worst performance during certain times, like the PM rush and on Fridays and Saturdays. Also, we have more challenges, obviously, on urban versus suburban bus routes. On-time performance was buoyed by staff adjusting runtime, adjusting run times regularly. That means the time for the bus to complete its route from the beginning to the end, so the buses can more reliably meet the schedules that are advertised to our customers. And strong fleet reliability is thanks to our well-established vehicle replacement program and midlife overhaul program. Another contributing factor to the fleet result is that we delivered lower service in the first half of the year, which meant less wear and tear on buses. Priorities for the current year in this area include piloting our zero-emission fleet buses, the priority bus improvements in DC and the network redesign, as well as continuing to fill our operator vacancies. Like bus, let's move to Metro Access. Like bus, Metro Access on-time performance and fleet reliability both met targets for the year. What does it mean to be on time for Access? It means that Access vehicles arriving at their designated pickup location do so within a 30-minute on-time window. Thanks to less traffic, this result was 94% for the year, while the fleet result was 23,101 miles between failure. The strong MDBF, that's the fleet measure, is thanks to our vehicle replacements, which happens at the end of their life, which is about 4 years for these fleets. In the current year, we are replacing 350 aging vans and 50 sedans, and 300 with 50 sedans and 300 ramp-equipped minivans. We're also continuing our efforts to improve scheduling. Okay, moving to the next driver of customer satisfaction, crime and safety. Okay, this slide has a lot of content. We have 8 metrics. Each of these shows a 3-year trend again from FY20 to 22. Metro reports on injuries and safety events that meet reporting criteria established by the FTA and the Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration, as well as Part 1 crimes that are reported to the FBI. We aim for 0 injuries, of course, as well as fatalities and safety events. The annual targets that we set put us on a realistic glide path to achieving that vision of 0. Crime and customer injuries are scaled to ridership. In summary, we saw positive performance on all safety measures with the exception of employee injuries, shown in the red square in the bottom left corner. Let's walk through the results with a focus on employee injuries where we did miss the target. Part 1 crime on the top left corner met target and fell by about 30% in FY22 compared to 21. Crimes against property, which is the dark blue bar there, returned to pre-pandemic levels. Crimes against persons in the lighter gray part of the stacked bar remained elevated related to pre-pandemic rates. In the middle column at the top is a monthly crime rate trend for the past year. Moving down the left column of the slide here to customer injuries, we met target and improved 28% over the prior year, FY21. Rail injuries are led by slips, trips, and falls, and for bus and access, collisions are the leading cause of injuries. Those are mostly deemed as non-preventable. Moving down the left column to the bottom section of the page, as I mentioned, employee injuries is the area where we missed target overall, both for rail on the left side and for bus on the right side. You can see the 3-year upward trend for each of the modes. The target we aimed for was to maintain a baseline average of the previous 2 years. So why is the trend increasing? If we drill down to employee injuries by mode, we can see for rail, stress and assault injuries were the most frequent, accounting for 27% of injuries during the year and 50% higher than last year. Second in line is slips, trips, and falls. For bus employees, the 2 most common injury types were stress and assault and collision related. There were almost double the number of stress and assault claims in 22 versus the prior year. Stress and assault injuries come from threats and assaults from customers, witnessing adjacent violence, and so on. On the next slide, I'll share what we're doing to address this increasing trend of employee injuries, something that transportation professionals and other modes are experiencing as well. You've all heard about what happens on airplanes, and we are also victims of that. The next set of metrics are reportable safety metrics to FTA and OSHA. So moving to the middle column, Rail collisions and smoke and fire incidents both met target. For rail collisions, we sustained big improvements since FY20. Of 3 events, none involved trains with passengers, 2 involved roadway maintenance machines, and the 3rd occurred when a train contacted a bump post when it was being parked overnight in the yard. For fire incidents, just over half are debris related, and those are up over the last year because we just have more people riding and therefore more debris is created. The last 3 reportable safety events are shown in the far right column: bus collisions, red signal overruns, and derailments. All of those met target. Bus collisions, about 2/3 of those that are reportable are deemed non-preventable, but we still have to report them. Traffic is a key driver, as I mentioned, and the reason we saw an increase over FY21 is, according to Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, traffic has returned to 90% of pre-pandemic levels in this area. Red signal overruns has seen a large improvement in the last 3 years. There were no signal overruns after November 2021, demonstrating that our efforts to address human factors have been effective. Staff were trained on important safety mitigation procedures, and managers increased the frequency of their operator reviews to ensure that they are following procedures. Finally, on the bottom right corner, there have been no derailments since the 2 in October of 2021. One was a work vehicle, and the other, of course, was the one that led to the 7000 series removal. So now I'd like to share some actions that we're undertaking to improve safety. For crime reduction, we're working differently, and I'm not going to steal Mr. Dwyer's thunder. He's going to speak about that next. Moving to the right side of the slide here, we're aiming to bring down injuries and incidents through a number of actions and initiatives. So for employee injuries where we missed our target, for the rail side, we're continuing and expanding our de-escalation training. All the station managers have been trained on de-escalation, and now we're moving to supervisors. On the bus side, we also do the de-escalation training for all the public-facing employees. We have a 2-month safety sprint for rail employees to reinforce risk identification, reporting, and mitigation. So when we can identify risk to safety, we can do everything possible to prevent them from happening. For bus employees and customers to reduce collisions, we've restarted a program that was paused during the pandemic, where supervisors ride buses to assess behavior and provide refresher coaching on defensive driving to prevent collisions. We also procured a new collision avoidance system for installation on the bus fleet. Not listed here, but last spring we also launched a public awareness campaign to reduce employee assaults. In terms of keeping smoke and fire incidents low, we're replacing rail insulators in trouble areas every 2 years and regularly cleaning the track beds. For reduction of safety events and injuries through SMS, we're launching a new system for employees so that they can easily report safety concerns and issues, and that means we can take action much faster and better manage the risk, as I mentioned. You've also just heard about the Joint Labor and Management Safety Committee and the partnership with MITRE, which Teresa just spoke about. Okay, let's move to the final stop in terms of the drivers of customer satisfaction: asset availability. Investing in our assets is necessary to ensure safety and reliability. Starting on the left column at the bottom, we did not meet target for % of available track. This metric is defined by the FTA. It's a set snapshot in time each month, and I believe that is Wednesday at 9 a.m. on a certain Wednesday of the month. The first one, she tells me. The vast majority of track under restriction, 3.3% of the 4.3%, was due to planned major capital projects to keep our system in good repair. During the year, this included the Green Line Platform Improvement Project, 2 projects on the Red Line to upgrade tunnel ventilation system and repair platform canopies, and the Platform Improvement Program on the east side of the Orange Line. We didn't meet target for this metric. Why? The Red Line projects took longer than planned, and we also had more than expected unplanned speed restrictions. In the fall and winter, we slowed trains to prevent slippery rails from leaves. Since we've been running more legacy fleets and fewer 7K cars, the legacy fleet is more susceptible to slippage than the 7K fleet, and therefore we had to slow them down. Moving to the right column here, Elevator and escalator availability, another one of our key assets, both met the target. Units are unavailable due to corrective or preventive maintenance and capital rehabs and replacements. Our targets do take into account this planned work and the time we're going to be spending on it. So that means that when we meet our target, which we did, see the 2 green boxes, we have been able to minimize unplanned outages. The priorities for assets in this current year is completing the renovations at the 5 Orange Line stations, rehabbing the Yellow Line tunnel and bridge, and continuing the multi-year replacement of escalators and elevators. Okay, ridership. So as we address each and all of the drivers of customer satisfaction that I walked through just now, I mentioned that we will continue to build ridership as our transit system works better due to managing all these drivers effectively. And moving people is our core business, so ridership is a key metric. Total ridership in FY22 was at 142 million, was 35% above the forecast and 75% higher than the previous year. By June of 2022, ridership had reached 60% of pre-COVID levels. Bus carried more customers than rail, but that lead is now starting to narrow. You can see the trends in the bullets with the highest ridership midweek. Active bus customers are riding 4 days per week, while active rail customers ride 2 to 3 days a week. On the trend chart at the bottom right, you'll note the slump in January and February. That is when Omicron hit and bus reduced service due to the operator shortage. Ridership then rebounded in the spring, as it often does, with tourism, but also as workers and students were returning to offices and schools in greater numbers. We're now seeing average weekday ridership at about 260,000 for rail and over 300,000 for bus. And I'm happy to report that yesterday, with regular commuting increases, plus a large convention in DC and a hockey game, we broke the 300,000 barrier for rail. I think actually it was 307,955 to be precise. That's the biggest ridership day post-pandemic, so that's super exciting. Other top ridership days have been in late September, and they all tend to fall on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. I'm going to now turn it over to Jordan, who's going to speak about some crowding analysis. We do not have a slide on this, but this is sort of hot off the presses. As ridership goes up, we are experiencing crowding, and those of you who are riding the system, all of us who do, can see that every day. Thank you, Jordan.
Great, thanks. So we've seen that post-Labor Day, we've seen an increase, particularly around 8 a.m., about 35% more, an increase of 35% in ridership around 8 a.m. And then again at 5 p.m., ridership is up about 13%. So it's crowding during peak periods is what we're seeing. We've seen that the amount of time that customers spend on crowded trains has more than doubled post-Labor Day. In particular, it is acute on the Red Line, and now we're starting to see it on the Orange and Silver Line. For example, just looking at Tuesday, so 2 days ago, between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m., 5 of 7 Orange and Silver Line trains were crowded between Virginia Square and Farragut West. So this wasn't happening before Labor Day. We are also seeing crowding kind of during this period between 8 a.m. and 9 a.m. on the Red Line in both directions. So we see it in particular between Van Ness and Farragut North, and then also in the other direction between NOMA and Metro Center. And the Red Line is the most crowded in the AM. That's where we see the most crowding in our system. And this has persisted even though we have been trying to insert 1 to 2 trippers, which are extra trains that travel, kind of trying to alleviate when we see the most crowding. And we've been trying to insert those in each direction during these times, but we're still seeing this crowding. So the trippers help, but we still see crowding on other trains.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, so now we're on the final slide here, kind of looking ahead. For the coming year, we're looking to make some reporting improvements. I think you'll be very happy about these. These really focus on the customer experience. Mr. Clark has challenged us to add some new metrics. These will include things like missed trips and accuracy of arrival predictions. We'll be adding some safety measures for the agency safety plan to fully align those KPIs. In the continuing spirit of transparency, I mentioned in my introduction, we're going to improve the public's access to relevant data through dashboards that are going to be updated more frequently. We have a very kind of static dashboard right now that's updated quarterly, and that is not a best practice, so we're looking forward to doing that. And then customers using those dashboards will be able to drill down to specifics about their usual trips. The graphic here is just sort of a sample, and it's not really real data, but we are still working on that, and we look forward to letting you all know when that's available. And this was going to be introduced in a phased approach. We look forward to sharing the results from the first quarter of this current year that we're in with you at this committee meeting in December. And that brings me to the end of the presentation, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your attention.
Andre and Jordan, thank you very much for this crystal clarity in performance outcomes, in contributing factors, and the way ahead. Really appreciate it. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Dr. Lowe?
Okay. This is a really great presentation. Like, obviously, some of this is hard to hear, but there's also some incredible gems in here, too. I mean, so just thank you. Great report. First question is about, it's obvious kind of in the big picture that a lot of the performance and safety issues that we're facing right now are related to running grandma and grandpa rail cars, just running these really old cars. And so a way that we can mitigate that is to make sure that we're running as many 7Ks as we can. How often are we running the full 20 7Ks right now? Are we really maximizing that?
Andrea, I'll jump in on a quick question there, board member. So we have authority inside of our plan that the WMSC approved to run 20. However, we can never actually fully run 20 because part of that plan, one of those conditions in that plan, is subfleeting the plan. It's a partial amount of the fleet of 7Ks to what we would call high press tonnage, the axle and the wheel piece. And so the most trains we can actually put together in the shop and get out with that subfleeting is actually 16. So we should have 16 out today. We had 16 out yesterday. Our whole plan was to meter and grow that up to 16 this week. We're on plan, we've done that, but we are now maxed out because the plan has multiple kind of conditions, and one condition prevents the other condition from happening.
Okay, that's from the rider perspective and just from my perspective, that's frustrating. But thank you for helping me understand that. That clarity is really helpful. On the bus side, you mentioned in the presentation how we have these lines where we've budgeted to run a really great frequent level of service. I didn't see mention that we'd cut that because we don't have enough operators in order to actually deliver the budgeted level of service right now. I think that adding a metric about how accurate the apps are at predicting bus trips, I think at the end of the day, like, that's just really going to get to what customers actually want in terms of experience. So I think that's a good thing. And then I have a question about employee injuries, just because we talked about this at the last quarterly performance report and how this is really heading in the wrong direction. We're now seeing the annual summary, but between Q3 and Q4, was there movement on that performance metric? Sorry, I should have emailed this in advance.
If we can't come up with it right away, we'll follow up with you and let you know details. It looks like we have it on the back there.
It looks like we saw on the rail system employee injury side a bit of improvement in Q4. So that's positive. On the bus side, however, Q4 wasn't great. So we didn't see a big improvement between Q3 and Q4. It looks like Q4 was worse than Q3.
Okay, and I mean, like, just disappointing because I know that we're trying new things in order to try to do something about this, and so, like, just to know everything that we're doing, it's still not enough, this is headed in the wrong direction, this is horrible, we have to do something about this. It seems also like maybe it'd be helpful if we disaggregated stress versus, like, physical actual assault. We're putting those together right now, and is that helping us understand what we need to do about this? I feel like this is maybe combining two issues that might have two kind of separate sets of solutions. So we should really think about disaggregating that in the report, because otherwise I don't think we can understand if the interventions that we're taking are actually addressing the issue. So just a thought. That's it for me.
Thank you. As an admin note, Vice Chair, Ms. Martin Proctor has joined us by audio, just so everyone knows that. Mr. Schmidberg? Okay. Ms. Klein?
Thank you. Actually, Dr. Lowe asked several of my questions.
It's the obvious is coming out of the report.
Right. But I have a couple other just points. I do think that disaggregating not just stress from physical assault, but all of the components of employee injuries would be helpful to see, because you think you said that's a large percentage, but not all of them. So that would be great. I'm really interested in the bus on-time performance metric. I think when I first saw this report last year, we were experiencing very unusual situations where a lot of buses were coming early because there wasn't traffic on the streets. I'm assuming that's not happening as much anymore.
There we go. We have to adjust the run times of the buses in our system so that it kind of accommodate the level of traffic. So we try to stay on top of that,
Yeah.
so that the information the customers get is accurate.
The target for bus, I think, was 77% on time. And on time is it still the 2 minutes early to 7 minutes late? Okay, so just so people know what on time means in this context. 77%, was that derived based on some level of improvement for last year, or has that been our standard target for bus OTP?
Yeah, Jordan's team sets a target every year, so I'll let her talk about her methodology.
Yeah, so the 77% was a targeted improvement over where we had performed over the prior 2 years. So, and this year we're aiming for 78%. So I know it's incremental improvements, but we are trying to continue. We know that's still not good enough for a lot of our customers.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I was going to say that. Do you happen to know offhand what the target was in 2019 prior to the pandemic? Or maybe fiscal 2020, whatever was prior to the pandemic?
I believe it was around 77%.
Oh, so it's about the same. I mean, that's really interesting to me, because that's basically 1 out of every 4 buses is not coming on time, which doesn't seem like an aspirational target for serving our customers, particularly since probably some of that is clumped onto certain routes, which I'm looking forward to seeing in the interactive dashboard that you're going to be putting up. Which means, I'm not sure what the right answer is, but as we're developing a better bus network, as we're doing the strategic transformation plan, I think having a more aspirational target here, or moving towards one, is going to be really important for our customers.
Agreed. And as we can get more bus priority on streets, that will also contribute greatly
That's a great
to
point.
more aspirational results.
That is a great point. Those things do have to align and work together.
Board member, if I can, I just want to add one little comment to that too, which is, not all of our customers' experience is monolithic either, right? So we might have a route that hits 75% on-time performance, but part of that route might be operating at 92 and another part's at 53. And depending on time of day. And then the team, we've been kind of talking a lot about the difference between where a route is and where we have corridor service. So we have a lot of people in our system that don't care what bus they get on, depending if they're on the corridor that has 3 or 4 routes, because they're where the interlining is happening, geeky interlining kind of transit term, but if you're in that section, you don't care. It's the first bus and then I'm getting off. So we got to start breaking all that down to get into the different types of customer experience, because then we can get into where we do our supervision better, where we do our customer signage better, where we can work with our jurisdictional partners on transit improvements, both lane, that could be signal priority, or queue jumps or other things. So want to get a lot more granular and then put that on dashboards so people could see the full spectrum of the customer experience. That's what the team's working on.
That's terrific. I think that's exactly the right direction to head in. Will the new KPIs be included in the first quarter FY23 report, or is that later in the year?
Our aim is to include the service delivered, which is a positive way of looking at missed trips, if that makes sense. The service we're not delivering was missed. And we'll start with the accurate information for bus. And then we'll be able to add rail by the second quarter.
That sounds great. Thanks. This was a really helpful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smedberg?
Yeah, I do want to say, Andrea and Jordan, I mean, there are a lot of information nuggets in here, and I think the simplicity and sort of clarity in which they're presented was certainly appreciated by me anyway. So thank you for that. So.
Are there any other questions or comments? Ms. Babers?
Just a quick question. First of all, thank you all for the information. It was really helpful. On this last slide, Jordan, you answered the service delivered, because I wanted to make sure I understood what that is. And these 4 charts do represent the new dashboards?
We will be focusing on these. We would also like to add some information about crowding. And potentially we could also I think the idea is that we're going to also reach out to customers to understand what they want to see, because we could also look at, elevator and escalator availability or other things. But we know that these ones are the kind of, to start with, some of the most important for customers.
Okay, and then can you just clarify what is the accurate real-time information?
Yeah, so it's looking at, everyone has their favorite app probably that they use to identify when your next bus or train is coming. So one, we can look at how much of our scheduled service is actually we're providing real-time predictions for. So that's kind of one aspect of the measure. The second aspect is if it says the bus is going to come in 3 minutes, does it really come in 3 minutes? So we're trying to measure the accuracy as well of that information that you're receiving.
Right. So, but I thought that, anybody can create an app and put it out there, and it's not WMATA's app. So I actually thought that WMATA was not necessarily, relying on those apps, because it's not a WMATA app. So that's why I'm trying to figure out.
I understand. It's based, all the apps are based on information that we provide. So we have on our website, we publish real-time information. So we publish the locations of, our trains and our buses, and we publish the predictions. And so then the apps consume that and they display it differently. Some apps do add their own kind of juice to the predictions, but what we're trying to measure is based on the information we're providing on our website, how accurate that is.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that we're going to be portraying our information on the website, because just because an app is out there does not mean whoever programmed it and put it out there, it's an accurate app.
Correct.
So, okay, great. Thank you.
Mr. Smedberg?
Mr. Chair, just one final comment. One thing I think is interesting, this reliance on the mom and or grandma and grandpa fleet of cars, what these numbers would look like if we had more and more 7,000 series cars back, if we actually had a plan approved based on safety, not process, but based on safety, that we could really improve our ridership or customer experience here, have better on-time performance. All the indicators would be way up. And particularly if we're experiencing crowding, because people are coming back, particularly the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I think that is one thing that clearly stuck out to me. And then hearing you articulate it, Andrea, when you were going through the slides,
Yeah, Chair, if I could just make a comment on that. Obviously, it's something to say that this team is focused on 7K restoration would be the understatement of understatements. We are focused on that all day, every day, and we are working collaboratively as possible with the WMSC on that. They're running crowding data every day, and I got this report given to me this morning, and Jordan made a reference to it, and we'll put those data points out later, so it's hard maybe to hear something from the presentation, but to reiterate, ridership at 8 a.m. is up 35% compared to pre-Labor Day. That is very significant, and the amount of time customers are now spending on a crowded train has doubled. It's increased by 167% since Labor Day. So we have significant crowding concerns going on at certain times of the day, and it's gone now from just the red line to now we have blocks on the orange and the silver line as well. So I know the community is frustrated. I know our passengers are frustrated. We share their frustration. We are doing everything we can. We are looking at this from a holistic safety point of view, and ridership is only going to continue to grow. And the math will not add up. We have no more trains. So I know I get tweets all day, every day. We run more trains. We are running every available approved train that we have at Metro to serve the customers. And we hope to be able to provide more. But until we get approval, we have all the trains in service. All the trains we have available are in service.
And Mr. Clark, I'm really concerned about the continued reliance on these older legacy vehicles and the safety issues that may come down if we're just continually running these cars.
The maintenance
that to
team
me is a real concern.
is doing an amazing job. We have a lot of rail cars from the 80s out there providing service every day. Now, they are safe trains. Let's make it crystal clear. Those are very safe trains. But, if you have a 40-year-old fridge, it's going to not be as efficient and perform as well as a brand new fridge. And so just trying to use relatable terms that people might use on an everyday basis. And so they're safe. We believe the 7Ks are actually a safer train. Our chief safety officer has said that. Our chief operating officer has said that. Multiple safety regulatory boards have actually indicated that as well. So I think we've run them over 440 million miles. So that isn't to say we did not have an issue. But I'm really proud of the efforts of our safety department and our vehicle team, how much of that work they put in over the last year to find a really good process to do safety assurance. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're after, safety assurance. We're measuring. After we measure more, and then we measure again. And we are providing safe service out there for the community. So I just wanted to highlight these numbers. This morning really hit me hard again, how quickly ridership is escalating and how little optionality we have to improve that for our customers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Letourneau.
Yeah, very briefly, Mr. Clark, you can choose to comment or not, but I will say I am concerned about the lack of focus from the Safety Commission on crowding as a safety issue. And this is not the first time that this has come up, but it has not been, I don't think, taken seriously. And I hope that your words will be heeded, because it is a safety issue if we have crowded trains, just as much as any sort of mechanical issue is. And I know I have full confidence in the work that we're doing to inspect these 7Ks, but we can't as easily prevent the type of issues we get from crowding that we're now starting to see in the system and will continue to see. And that should be a real factor in considering how our plans are received, approved, and evaluated moving forward.
Yeah, the comment I would make on that, board member, would be, and I think our chief safety officer did a good job earlier talking through our MITRE relationship. We are doing everything through a system safety approach. And when you do proper system safety approach, you are looking holistically at how the interplays between different factors and obviously managing risk. So we believe we're managing risk really well on our fleet. Now we are introducing other risk factors, and we will have less actual tools in our toolbox besides closing a station, preventing people going onto a platform, or holding people on a platform, because at some point we can't fit more people onto a train.
Yeah, and I know we're looking at it holistically, but we're looking at it holistically. I'm not so sure everyone else is.
Ms. Martin Proctor.
Yes, good morning, team. My apologies for not being able to be there in person. I did want to comment on the fact that I think that this report was put together perfectly. I appreciate the information that has come forward. And I also think it is going to allow us to really look at also the issue of accessibility as we drill down more, not just from the bus standpoint and the rail standpoint, but also from the digital standpoint, looking at some of these apps and how well they work and how well they are accessible to the community in full. So I just wanted to add that comment in and let everybody know that we are looking at all dimensions of safety, operations, and security as we make the rider experience the best that it can be for our customers here in the DMV area.
Thank you. Dr. Lowe?
To change the subject back to 7Ks for just one moment here, the other thing that occurred to me last night while I was waiting for the blue line is that everybody at that end of the system right now is already dealing with major service reduction. And the fact that the current return to service plan doesn't allow any 7Ks to run on the blue line means that it's just a very different experience riding the blue line right now relative to riding the red line. And that raises just kind of like these basic issues of just like fairness and what people who use different parts of the system are experiencing. And like, I understand that, as we think about return to service, obviously this is all through the lens of safety, but just based on the presentation that we had at the last board meeting from the safety team, I have some questions about some of these restrictions about like the wheel press tonnage and which line what can run on, and like exactly, I'm not sure that it is clear to the public how some of these restrictions are related to safety, just based on what we heard from the safety team at the last board meeting. So I think that we do need to offer the public clarity on how the way we're operating right now is or is not related to restrictions that are driven by safety concerns, given what we have going on and given how the enormous amount of data we have right now about how well our measurement-based protocols are working. So that's just something that I think that we owe to the public.
Yeah, great comment, board member. I know the chief safety officer and the chief operating officer are working on a blog post, and it's very, we want to demystify the technical elements. It's very complicated industry we have, and I think we use a lot of terms and make it sometimes very hard to see the basics. I will say on the different lines, so the way we have it right now is, to try to bring some clarity to it is, and Teresa and Brian, if I say this incorrectly, please jump up. I think I have this pretty clear, but please jump up. It's a little bit of jet lag, so if I'm off. But we are currently running a sub-fleet of the 7Ks with what we refer to as high-press tonnage. Right. Okay? And those are being measured every 4 days, and we are running those on green and red, and we're allowed on yellow. Yellow obviously is shut down. Okay. We also run other parts of the 7K fleet that are quote-unquote low press tonnage, i.e. not this sub-fleet of high press tonnage. We are using those for our testing and training trains. So when we are training new employees, as an example, or a group of employees doing testing, because there's various things we do run trains for testing on, not just this one topic. And we are running those on a 7-day measurement interval, and we are running those on all lines. So again, just to repeat. So they're running. We are running on all lines, part of the fleet, when we just have employees on there doing testing, and we measure those every 7 days, and safely, no issues. And then when we have customers on board, we are running on a 4-day interval, and only on part of our network with only a part of the sub-fleet. So yes, it's confusing. So we are hoping to bring, I mean, there's just no other.
I'm sorry, it's not just confusing. Randy, I'm really not trying to pick a fight right now, but that there are some inconsistencies there that I have a problem with as a rider. And not from a safety perspective, I'm talking about like from a service perspective. So
Yeah,
I
again-
think that there's a reconciliation of why both those things are okay. That there's a reconciliation of that is owed to the public. And if it's not from us, it's owed by.
Yeah, I think, again, we are trying to work very collaboratively with our WMSE partner, but we clearly understand, and listen, I've been very clear, I want to be as transparent as humanly possible with the public. I hope the public has seen that we are leaning into that. The team is working on an information piece that we can get out that would kind of give more clarity to these technical topics, because there is some illogic that the average person may look at that. There are some technical reasons for different things, but there is some illogic to as well. And we want to, again, demystify and be transparent and just say, here's what we are doing.
Okay, thank you.
And in closing comments, I just want to reinforce a point made by our general manager dealing with our maintenance workforce and our operations workforce. Just tremendous work. Looking at all of the challenges and moving parts that we have, they have delivered. So big kudos to our frontline workforce. If there are no other questions, we'll move to Mr. Dwyer.
Good morning, General Manager and members of the board. I am here today to update the board on initiatives to improve customer service and the employee experience. The board reviewed customer and employee survey results several weeks ago in our strategic planning session. One theme was consistent, whether shared by customers or employees. Folks do not feel as secure as we would hope on our system. MTPD is on the system each day, interacting with customers and employees. In addition, the chief and the senior team have been active participants in our town halls, where they have heard directly from their fellow staff about security concerns. The entire MTPD continue to diligently track crime statistics through their problem-oriented policing model. The last 2 months, we've been working hand in hand with the chief and the command staff to attempt to maximize the number of officers out on the system each day. Just for, pardon me, I think I should have went ahead on a slide, folks, so that's part of what I just prefaced, my apologies. Our current area of focus that I will cover today are represented by the 4 captions here. And as far as security initiatives, we're working differently. We believe you can be a vested partner in the community you serve and implement public safety initiatives on our system. MTPD is an active partner in the communities within our service area. This ranges from our Faith in Blue program, where we partner with community churches to encounter our young people in a safe, non-confrontational space, to our monthly youth advisory meetings. Chief Anzalo and his team have focused on deploying more officers and supervisory staff out on the system. They've taken a multi-pronged approach to undertake this that involves reassigning staff from construction details that had little return on investment and deploying these resources directly back into the system. That is, by having our officers riding buses and trains each day. The high-vis teams depicted here, the program's known as Operation Helping Hands. Why? That's what these officers are out there for. And whether it's our customers, our employees, or the public at large, that's what they do each day. We've established a bus patrol team that is totally dedicated to riding buses throughout the system and interacting with bus operators and frontline staff. Although the calendar year isn't over and we can never stop innovating, if trends continue, we may actually see a reduction this year in bus operator assaults. And we heard the board loud and clear with regards to disaggregating some of that data, because I do think when we include stress in there, as critical as that is, I used to be an operator, it's a stressful position. We really want to focus on the assault numbers as well. This reduction has had everything to do with collaboration and coordination between our bus operations vehicle maintenance staff, transportation staff, MTPD, and our training staff. 100% of our buses have cameras. 100% of our buses have shields, and 100% of our operators have had de-escalation training. We've hired 5 administrative positions for the department that can address office tasks that have traditionally been undertaken by sergeants. This allows the sergeants to be out on the system where we want them, supporting our patrol officers. We actually have a program in place initiated by the chief at Mr. Clark's behest with regards to sergeants conducting office hours for meetings with bus operators in break rooms throughout the system. We want to ensure we take advantage of the investment we've made in bringing in administrative staff, and we could not think of a better use of their time than hearing directly from their operating peers on a regular cadence. MTPD is holding monthly meetings with fellow members of the operations senior team on crime stats in the system, commencing this month. The meetings are meant not just to focus on statistics, but to further develop existing relationships between the parties and allow the command staff to get direct feedback from their fellow operations employees about potential areas of focus. It allows the operating managers to do what they do best, advocate for their frontline staff. Regarding addressing mental health concerns, I know this was a hot topic at the after conference. A number of us were just pleased to attend. And we are in the process of hiring and deploying crisis intervention specialists trained in mental health awareness and de-escalation. Our intention is to pair these individuals not only with officers, but with operational staff on the system. We have and will expand links to services provided by local organizations specializing in mental health and social work assistance. The slide says that we had 100+ applicants. I think the actual number was 116 applicants received. We'll be onboarding these staff through February. The interviews have already occurred. The interview panel included reps from the DC Department of Health and the Mayor's Office. Several authority managers, including Teresa, Randy, myself, the Chief, and Deputy Chief Baum, have been discussing our deployment plans with our industry peers, including agencies like SEPTA in Philadelphia, Vancouver, and Cap Metro down in Austin, amongst others, on a concept of operations and deployment plan for the staff. We intend to be the industry standard for these type of positions going forward, and we'll be anxious to share information with our fellow transit partners. With regards to fare evasion campaign, as we discussed again at the strategic planning session, we've heard loud and clear from customers and employees that they view fare enforcement as a key driver of personal safety and security on the system. When customers were asked what would make you feel safer when riding Metro, one of the response options was payment is enforced more often and fewer people skip paying. 33% of bus customers and 41% of rail customers chose this response option as something that would make them feel safer. We are one Metro, and we expect all customers to pay their fair share. We have a set schedule of periods when officers are out on rail and bus locations throughout the system, providing the warning you see depicted on the slide to fare evaders. We have also provided information to all our bus, rail, and MTPD employees about our collective efforts, as in addition to the revenue necessity this program is, it does address our employees' direct and continuous feedback. Local 689 has been a partner in these discussions and supports our fare evasion campaign. Per 689 President Jackson, this was discussed at both of last week's union meetings. Notices have been displayed for the campaign on digital signs throughout the system, and placards in English and Spanish have been placed in all station manager booths. MTPD is conducting citation training with Ms. Lee's team as we speak, and fare enforcement will begin in earnest on November 1st. The Clean Sweep program. This program is focused on cleaning, painting, relamping, power washing, and a general station cleanup. Clean Sweep is part of our strategy to get folks back on the system, and I think as discussed today with regards to our ridership numbers, perhaps in part this has served us well. Although cleanliness may be next to godliness, it also helps promote a sense of orderliness and personal safety and security. We started this program around Labor Day, and I think by any measure, it's been a rousing success. As with any agency's success, there is always a hard-working team involved in these efforts, and I'd single out Rodolfo Batard, Dwayne Lloyd, and Danielle North for their leadership in executing this program. We've gotten internal and external positive feedback. Our next opportunity will be to maintain this level of excellence. It's a high bar, but I think the team is up to the challenge. And I should say that I did not have a chance to update the numbers, my apologies, but we're actually up to 84 stations complete at this point. And the next number of slides just depict some of the impact that the customers have seen out there. And probably some of them are better than others, but I do think they're telling. The final section of the presentation has to do with station customer service practices. We have an APTA review panel coming in next week to look at our current station manager model. An APTA team made up of reps from London, NYCTA, Toronto, and Vancouver are here, or will be here, pardon me. They will view all types of procedural and training material that's been provided. They'll visit station managers out on the system, probably 7 or 8 stations. They'll visit the ROC, and we've also provided Local 689 and President Jackson the opportunity to be an active participant in this process. I want to be abundantly clear about one thing. Our station managers, to a person, are a hard-working team. The peer review isn't focused on the individual. It's focused, once again, on maximizing the authority's return on the significant investment we make in staff. Most large agencies over the last number of decades have gone towards a station management model where employees are no longer in a booth, but out amongst the public. In a digital age, you don't need to be tethered to a booth to be able to monitor alarms and look at cameras. With appropriate equipment, we believe there can be remote monitoring where you can observe all you need to and more. The peer review team will provide high-level findings before they depart, which is next Friday, and a final report, including suggestions and recommendations that should be received in the next 2 to 3 months. And finally, another new position, customer experience liaison. The intent is for this to be a highly visible, uniform presence to proactively engage and assist customers. They'll liaison between Metro, the customer, and the community. They'll monitor activities inside and outside of the stations, on trains, platforms, and buses during revenue service. They'll assist during special events and disruptions. I know we've talked a great deal this morning about some overcrowding we're experiencing right now. We may bring in people who traditionally haven't applied for jobs in transit but have more of a customer service background. And with the crowding we have, the intention will be to have these people, where possible, out on platforms assisting with spreading people out and trying to make our system safe. I would say that that will be probably the best we can do, because with the growth in ridership we've been talking about today, we're really strained to do much more than that right now. I think, some of what's represented here today was really the authority's best efforts to attract ridership back. It's worked. I think the numbers prove that, but without an additional set of trains or subset of trains that we can run, we're maxed out at this point. So I appreciate the time, and I'm anxious to take any questions.
Brian, thank you very much for
Bush
laying
Chair.
down those series of initiatives and bringing it back to our visibility. I'm a proponent that activity is not necessarily productivity, but I will say this. In the last 12 weeks or so, we feel the energy, we understand the priorities, and we appreciate the actions taken across the board. You've accurately defined issues that have been there, but most importantly, you're optimizing resources, and that's one of the keys to success.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, and to the entire team, and to Randy.
Of course.
For moving in that direction. At this time, I'll open the floor to questions, and I'll start with Dr. Lowe. Thanks.
Wow, this might be like the single most exciting presentation I've ever received at a WMATA board meeting, so thank you very much. Let's just go through it one by one. Let's start with the security initiatives. So first, I'd love to learn more about the youth advisory meetings that MTPD convenes, who the youth are that we have serving on that. And frankly, I'm just like wondering if we could like get some advice from that youth committee about how to increase enrollment in the Kids Ride Free program in the District of Columbia, although I realize WMATA does not run that program. I wonder if we could ask them for tips.
I'm sure we can.
And then you mentioned that 100% of our buses have cameras. WMATA buses can have cameras on the inside and on the outside. Are you saying that 100% of our buses have cameras inside?
Correct. I think it's 82%, Dr. Lowe, have drive cameras on the outside.
Okay, so that feels like a super new development to me. I thought we were just like piloting cameras inside, and now we're from piloting to 100, or I misunderstood?
No, that's quite all right, Dr. Lowe. I think I've only been here for a short amount of time, but no, we have cameras on 100% of the buses, and we actually have a dedicated team that reviews that and, works on that camera system.
Okay, good to know. I'm on candid camera. Okay. And so you gave us a status on the hiring of crisis intervention specialists in that we've had 116 applications.
Yes.
But how many FTEs are we looking to hire out of that?
4. Pardon me, 4 initially.
Okay. Wow, so that's going to be super competitive.
It shall be, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then,
Dr. Lowe, could I interject one thing there? At the after conference, Randy actually talked to a gentleman, Kevin Quinn. I don't know if you folks happen to know Kevin, but he used to be the MTA CEO, and he's now up in Vancouver. So he has a representative who's coming in for the peer review next week. Kevin talked about the fact that they have additional staff that they train, not necessarily as crisis intervention specialists, but they make that part of the training for a lot of their customer-facing positions. So I think, that we're focused intently on bringing on the right people as crisis intervention specialists, but I do think this is the type of information you can get from your peers about how to perhaps expand that. So I didn't mean to hop in front of your question.
no, I think it's great I think every frontline WMATA employee understands that they are, whether they want to be or are prepared or not, they are in a situation where they're responding to crises all the time. There they are, the crises are happening. We absolutely should do everything that we can to equip every frontline WMATA employee to respond. Having this specialist capacity is also great too. Okay, specifically regarding the fare evasion campaign now, I think folks want to know a lot more about what fare enforcement's going to look like on November 1st. Could you give us a little more texture on what that's going to look like?
I can. Excuse me. As of November 1st, the plan is that we'll have command staff, captains and above, that will participate in each detail. We'll have 1 to 2 sergeants and a number of officers staffing from the 3 districts supplemented as needed. And we'll have teams out there from 7 to 1 p.m. and then 2 to 10 p.m.
How many teams are we going to have out?
I don't have the exact number. We do have a schedule of where we will be deploying the teams, but I'm not exactly sure the amount of teams. I can get that information for you.
Okay, and where are the teams going to focus?
They're focusing on, I can read the list to you of where they'll be, and it's based on some fare evasion data and just kind of spreading the help to make sure that we're out everywhere.
Yeah, Board Member, I guess I just had clarity. We're going to be very nimble, and so it's not going to be we're at one place and then we're there for a month. So the reality is we want to make sure this is done across the entire service network. So this will be done across all 3 jurisdictions that we serve, and trying to use as much data as possible for targeted times, or even in a station, there's sometimes some data that might suggest that this entrance may have more than the other entrance. So, and this entrance might be more morning versus PM. So I'm going to use data, but it's going to be geographically spread out. And the idea is to, we really want to lean into warnings, and hopefully we don't have fare evasion So, because our last thing we're trying to do here is have, we're trying to reduce tension. We don't want to create a lot of confrontation, but at the same time, we need people to follow the rules. So we're really trying to balance that out. We know there's a lot of children in the system that are part of a ride-free program that are not tapping their cards. Obviously, we want to help educate and get those students to be using their cards, but this isn't, we're not going to be having our trans police officers trying to arrest a 12-year-old because the 12-year-old should be, quite frankly, riding free already. They're just not. So they're doing data evasion versus fare evasion in some ways. So I just wanted to bring that context. We are trying as hard as we can to find the Goldilocks middle here of reducing fare evasion at the same time educating and getting people to respect the community transit system.
Randy, from your remarks, it's sounding like we're focusing on, you're saying station, you're saying, this is going to be focusing on Metro Rail?
Well, obviously, rail is easier to focus on than bus, but we will also be doing stuff at bus. So, for instance, bus, we'll probably do a lot more focus on, say, a bus terminal. So a Pentagon City, or sorry, a Pentagon, Anacostia, a Silver Spring, places where a couple officers could hit multiple buses in a row or outside of a bus to make sure that transactions are happening. We will also we have a bus team, and they will do some targeted, but we just got to be very open and reality-based. It is so much more difficult to do fare enforcement on buses. Some agencies have chosen to do that by literally the fare enforcement team will show up on the bus and then make sure everyone's validated on that bus. Obviously, you can get to a much higher fare compliance that way, but you're actually going to provide a much slower and much more bigger impact to service at the same time. So that's not beneficial either, especially we just talked about our performance numbers on certain routes. So rail is obviously the easier focus because it's fixed infrastructure with gates, but we are going to do everything we can to create bus areas where these fare enforcement teams can actually try to make a difference.
Okay, so like key themes I'm hearing here are do not trade off service for fare compliance. I think that's a great principle to carry into this. Don't be confrontational, especially with kids, and that we're going to be data-driven in terms of how we direct fare enforcement resources in an attempt to boost fare compliance.
Yeah, I think that's.
Is that a fair summary?
I think that's a pretty good summary, yeah.
I think that's I like that. So I just want to provide positive feedback on those being guiding principles for this. The key is that it's really fun for you and I to talk about these guiding principles. Every single person involved in rolling out this campaign needs to understand those principles and be totally bought in. Regarding cleaning stations, obviously a good thing to do. Woodley Park seemed really dark this morning when my train passed through.
Okay.
That's my only note there. On peer review, I had no idea APTA was so international, and I just think it's really cool that 2 out of the 4 peers that are coming to visit us are international. So that was fun to learn. And then finally, I love the customer service liaison idea as well. And I think that kind of plugs into a bunch of the other topics we've already talked about today. I just want to suggest that tracksuits would be incredible for the uniforms. And I think would really take it from like 0 to 100.
Comment noted, board member.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Babers.
Well, thank you to my fellow DC board member. She is always so exact. I thought you were going to inquire as to my question on the customer service liaison for Brian. First of all, thank you for the presentation.
Certainly.
When will the customer service liaison program start, and how many people are you looking to hire?
I don't have as good information on that. We're probably going to be rolling it out the beginning of next year. We're in the process of finalizing all the kind of HR aspects of it, and also really focusing on the type of individual we may have in. And the numbers on that, we need to dig in a little bit more. Would like to see about 15 to 25 starting out, but we're really trying to kind of vet the budget numbers and, determine what exactly that could be. More would be better, but we need to be strategic about how we do that.
Okay, great. And if I can just add for Tracy, for the Kids Ride Free program, since it is a District of Columbia program, so we have also doubled down internally with the government, and we have reached out to principals at all the schools to make sure that all the children, first of all, truly do have Smart Trip cards for the Kids Ride Free program, because some children do not have cards, and so therefore there is nothing for them to tap. We have sent information to parents and guardians' homes and newsletters, and we're trying to reach out however we can to do our part in helping to educate, because we also do not want any negative impact for any children who are going to school, because the Kids Ride Free program has been paid for already, and but the children just have to tap that card and go through the normal way. So just an update on that.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Brian.
Certainly, Mr. Chair, thank you.
For the presentation, and with no further business to come before this committee, we will stand adjourned, and I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Letourneau to begin the Finance and Capital Committee meeting.
Do you want a gavel, Don? Because we got the gavel here in case we need it. In case anybody gets unwieldy up here. Thanks. Good morning. Welcome to the Finance and Capital Committee. Thank you for joining us. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. If there are no objections, we'll consider the agenda approved as presented. Are there any objections by members of the committee? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Next to the approval of the minutes, we have the minutes of our September 22nd meeting. Are there any objections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, we'll consider the minutes approved as presented. We have two items on today's agenda. One is an action item for the committee to authorize staff to authorize a negotiated sale of up to $392 million in bonds to support Metro's capital program. Those bonds are supported by Metro's dedicated capital funding. Second, we'll receive an overview of the capital improvement program, including highlights from the last fiscal year and projects ongoing in FY23 and beyond into FY24. Presentation will provide also an overview of longer-term capital needs for Metro. I am going to invite our CFO, Dennis Anasike, up to begin our presentation. But before I do that, I just want to recognize that this is the first time we're meeting since Dennis has informed us that he will be leaving Metro at the end of this month to return to his family in Chicago. Dennis has had a great 8-year career at Metro. We have seen real progress in Metro's financial management, in establishing debt principles and other financial practices, and also clean audits, which is not something that we had always been able to say at Metro. So on behalf of all of us, and especially me personally, given the amount of time that we've spent together, I want to thank you, Dennis, for all your work at Metro. I know we'll have some other opportunities perhaps to do that, but I just wanted to recognize that. Thank you very much for your service. You want to say anything before we move on to our work?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And man, a few words. We are running way behind, and we have a lot of board business and executive session to continue with today. So hopefully everybody has had a chance to review the 2023A dedicated revenue bond item. I know we've seen it before. I thought we could just perhaps go right to any questions on that at this point, unless there's anything that you have to add that we hadn't heard previously. No. Okay. Any questions from members of the committee, members of the board on that item? Ms. Klein.
Not so much a question, just a comment. We've spent a lot of time talking about the operating deficit that we have, and I think that the conversation we will be having about the capital program over the next years, is equally important and significantly challenging as well. And I have no objection to this proposal, but I do think, we're going to have to pay some attention to this, how we're funding all of these things. So that's my comment.
Yeah, I think in the next item, when we get in the CIP, that will become abundantly clear, and we will dig into that a little bit. Okay, so I will move approval of the issuance and sale method for Series 2023A dedicated revenue bonds. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Babers. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, I'll ask the Corporate Secretary to call the roll.
Mr. Letourneau?
Aye.
Ms. Babers?
Aye.
Ms. Klein?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on then to our discussion on the CIP, which will, I think, begin by a presentation. I think, Mr. Webster, are you leading this one?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay. Giving them a second to reset the. I know. I'm trying to catch us up a little. Yeah, do you want to just start maybe
Yeah,
by,
sure.
why don't you start talking and then we'll catch
All
up.
right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom Webster, Strategy Planning and Program Management. I'm joined by my colleague Andy Off with Capital Delivery. We're pleased to be here this morning to provide a high-level update on Metro's capital improvement program in advance of more detailed discussions later this year and into next year as we move forward with plans for the future. The focus of Metro's capital improvement program continues to be on investments in projects and programs that improve safety, reliability, and state of good repair of the bus, rail, and paratransit system to meet our customers and our region's needs. Capital program invests regional and federal dollars in the replacement, rehabilitation, maintenance, and modernization projects and programs. Metro's capital program is structured and comprised of three components. Our 6-year capital improvement program that includes planned capital projects and programs that are programmed or anticipated for delivery in the 6-year period. Our 1-year capital budget, which is really the expenditure schedule for projects and programs for the upcoming budget year. And then a 10-year capital plan, which is a relatively new feature of our program that incorporates our 6-year CIP, our capital budget, and then extends beyond the current program to look at planned and future capital needs, some of which are not yet developed into projects with defined scopes and schedules. I'm on slide 3. Okay, thank you. Slide 3, yes. It's titled Capital Program Introduction. Further, the 10-year capital plan is not financially constrained. It looks at needs for roughly that 10-year period. Moving to slide 4. So this substantial investment by our regional and federal partners has supported significant progress in addressing many overdue capital needs. We've established a groundwork to continue addressing high priority asset needs while continuing to advance recurring life cycle maintenance, rehabilitation, and replacement programs. Certainly much more work to do to get caught up on overdue investments, particularly in structures, systems, and facilities, but substantial progress over the last several years in some key asset areas. I'll now turn the presentation over to Andy to step through some of our major active capital projects.
We have a slide up now. Can we just make sure we're synced? Which one should we be on? We're moving to the pie chart? This one, right? One more? Okay.
Okay, no, that's good.
Great.
All right. I'll run through a few projects here briefly. First would be our consumer project. where we were, where we did our first major shutdown between Memorial Day and Labor Day. So we just finished up our fourth iteration of that, where we were able to completely rebuild 17 platforms and to improve customer amenities and safety infrastructure at 20 stations. I'm, proud to report that, we were able to complete all 4 of these programs over the past 4 years on schedule and on budget. Next project is our Yellow Line Tunnel and Bridge Rehabilitation Project between Pentagon and L'Enfant on the Yellow Line. We've been fortunate to have some good coverage of that project. Happy to report that as of today, we are on schedule, to reopen next May. And the team is certainly working hard. We've all had, myself and Randy and Mr. Dwyer have had the opportunity to be out there. So that project is moving along quite well at this point. Next is the Potomac Yard Station, which I have spent the better part of the past 2 weeks at. Our new station between National and Braddock Road on the yellow and blue lines to serve the City of Alexandria community. We are scheduled to open up, get out of the shutdown, as of this morning, on the 6th of November. So just to use a relatable analogy, we will be bringing power up this evening, and the train control system, appears to be functioning. So it's somewhat analogous to, you got a new smartphone, it powers up, and it appears to work. Now you just need to run through all your applications and make sure they're actually working. So, it's a good place to be at. Still have a lot of train testing to do, but we are making good progress. And we are committed to, working, collaboratively with the city to get into establishing an opening date to publish that by the end of the year, but that will not happen until next calendar year. One of our state of good repair, blocking and tackling type projects, structural rehabilitation. A little behind the scenes here. Over the years, we've gone through the iteration of assessing all of our structural needs, and then prioritizing those based upon need, and then we package those by physical proximity and how we can best deliver service while executing these projects. This is more of a longer-term project. You can see the pictures here in the top right-hand corner as a Rockville canopy, which we tore down completely and rebuilt, and then some of the bridge work on the bridge between Stadium Armory and Minnesota in the blue line headed towards Largo there. Train control rehabilitation project. I can assure you that this is not about modernization. This is just about replacing the existing old stuff with the same old stuff, but has just been produced more recently. so more reliable. So this is not about, revitalizing or getting to our next generation train control system. This is keeping the infrastructure we have out there working in a more reliable way. It's the same type of infrastructure that we are installing on the Silver Line and at Potomac Yards. Again, another longer term project. This won't be wrapped up until 2026. Northern Bus Garage project in Northwest District of Columbia. Awesome project. Randy's had the opportunity to visit. Fully enclosed, historic, project that we fully intend to open up, as fully electric. That's how it's being designed and built. And we expect this to be open in the second quarter of calendar year 27. And that's for 150 buses. And then Bladensburg Bus Garage in Northeast, much bigger garage, total of 300 buses. Again, being designed, to be electric capable. In same timeline in general as the Northern Bus Garage project for second quarter calendar year 27. Yes, sir.
Andy, I don't want to get you off rhythm, but there's quite the cost discrepancy between Northern and Bladensburg.
Yes, sir.
480, almost $500 million.
Yes, sir.
Versus 260. One of them, as I understand it, is coming in with all the EV infrastructure as part of this. The other one, Bladensburg, we're essentially readying it for it, but not actually installing the equipment. Is that $200 million discrepancy in funding directly related to the 150 or the infrastructure for the electric bus fleet, or is it just other issues because of this type of facility and the age of it and all those kind of things?
Yes, sir, it's the latter. Really, it's not electric driving the price. I mean, there's some there, but it's nominal. It's really the fact it's a fully enclosed bus garage, so there are no buses that can be seen by the local community, whether either charging, or parked or undergoing maintenance. That's a huge piece of it. And just the fact of where it is from a historic perspective, and the facility is about 118 years old. So there's, lots of underpinning and structural work that needs to take place.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Whoop. Sorry, Tom. And I'll turn it back to Tom.
So in FY22, the last fiscal year, Metro invested over $2 billion through the capital program, which is the single highest year in the Metro's history of reinvesting through the capital program, and that was despite the challenges of the pandemic that impacted supply chain and other delays in delivery of some projects relative to our baseline schedule, really mid-pandemic back in the fall of 2020. In FY23, we anticipate that our budget of $2.4 billion, that our current forecast is in line with that for investment during the fiscal year. And again, continuing a focus on projects that advance safety, state of good repair, and system reliability. In terms of capital funding sources, so as I mentioned, the federal and regional investment is really what's making this possible, the reinvestment in the system. Our formula grant funding and match have increased as a result of the infrastructure law at the federal level, anticipating about $562 million in FY23, and then a small increase into FY24. Continued investment through PREA, our jurisdictional contributions in system performance, dedicated funding, pay-as-you-go contributions to the program, and then the debt support for the program that was discussed in the prior item. In terms of long-term capital needs at a high level here, we are anticipating capital needs in excess of $25 billion over the next 10 plus years. In the near term, dedicated funding in that federal grant support for the program will allow us to continue active projects and programs for the 6-year period. However, as designed, we will plan to continue issuing dedicated funding back debt, and the overall capital funding capacity will not support long-term those broad needs for systems data good repair and modernization going into the future. So absent new funding sources, new investment beyond that current 6-year period, we'll have to make some difficult choices about where to invest to keep the system safe and reliable. Turn it back to Andy.
Oh, thank you, Tom. So the bottom line of this slide is that myself and Tom intend to come back in the near future to the board to share a more longer-term view of our capital program, from a customer-facing perspective. Up to this point, we have spent, a lot of time, planning the work, but typically we would notify, our stakeholders and our customers, approximately 6 months in advance of the event. And then within 90 days, we would share the more detailed travel alternatives and the supplemental services that would be run, for our customers to support the project. So, but the reality is, as many know, these projects take many years, to plan and get to fruition. So we do have a longer range plan. So our intent moving forward is to come back, to this committee and share our longer term vision for these projects, understanding that, the longer out the projects are planned, the probability that they will shift and move, becomes greater. But we felt it'd be most appropriate to start sharing those forward-looking plans in a more transparent way, particularly as it applies to, being transparent, and then also how that aligns with our capital funding needs in the longer term. Tom?
And then just to close out, our schedule for the upcoming months, so the GM's proposed 6-year CIP and our updated 10-year outlook later this fall, and then work sessions and public hearings as is customary for our capital programming process in the winter, and then adoption of that 6-year program and capital budget in the spring. So that concludes our presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, and I'll open up to folks in a sec. I just want to thank you both. Obviously, we had some frustrations about the time frame on the Potomac Yard station, and we've talked about that. But big picture, capital delivery has been an area of great improvement at Metro over the last several years, and there can be confidence that the money that has been provided by partners and that Metro itself is providing is being put to good use. And I think we've done a much better job showing that, demonstrating that, and then the results are showing up. Is it safe to assume that we're pretty much always going to have some major capital disruption related, a project that's causing disruption going on from now until the foreseeable future, given our size and age?
Yes, sir. The general rule of thumb, we're going to continue to be, responsible asset owners, and if that's the case, state of good repair is never going to end, right? And I think we're getting to a point where, when you look at the basics of, structures and rail and power, we've made great strides. So I think moving forward, we'll continue to see these, state of good repair projects that are needed to keep the system safe and reliable, but also some, very needed modernization programs, to get us into the next century.
So, Tom, you mentioned that we will exceed or essentially use up our remaining capacity. We have had some dates associated with when that might occur. Are you prepared to give an estimate for us today?
So yes, there are obviously a number of variables that contribute to this: the rate of delivery, cost of projects, the market in terms of borrowing, a number of other factors, availability of other funding sources. Generally, we're looking at the end of the current 6-year period as the time when our capacity to issue debt against the $500 million dedicated funding runs out or starts to run out. That said, projections of other funding sources will still be able to sustain the basics, but the annual spend of $2 billion plus per year would shrink absent another or multiple other funding sources around that time.
Okay. We're currently spending about $60 million of the overall capital on preventive maintenance. So if we were to increase that number in a manner, maybe that's somewhat corollary with the additional funding we're getting from the federal government, but that will potentially impact the availability of capital funding over a period of time.
Yes, though not immediately. The increase in available federal grant funding would allow for a change in that level of preventive maintenance funding without directly impacting our active projects and programs. What you're looking at is long-term capacity.
Well, I'm thinking about when we start running out.
Yes.
It might accelerate that a little bit.
Yes, slightly depending on the scale of the change.
Other question, Mr. Smember.
Thank you. Tom, on your slide 32, the 2.05 invested in 22, refresh my memory. I think we originally budgeted 2.5 in that year.
It was about 2.5, yes.
And you've got 2.4 this year. So I'm just anticipating a potential comment or question, where I'm probably going to go with this. There was a lot of concern by the funding partners that, more subsidy than necessary was being, held. We weren't able to do everything that we had budgeted. So could you just give us a little insight as to the 22 figure there?
Yeah, a few things. I appreciate the question. Structurally, there have been some changes. As a result of dedicated funding and bonding capacity, the historic issue of underspending and jurisdictional funds remaining on hand is no longer the case. We're able to adjust to expenditure schedules and cash flow, and roughly calibrate the dedicated funding back to debt issuances to match the actual performance of the program and the actual spend rates. So yes, initially when the FY22 budget was developed in the fall of 2020, we anticipated a faster acceleration of capital investment than ultimately played out in FY22. A variety of factors contributed to that, a lot of dynamic moving parts here. Some of them were actually savings relative to the baseline budget in some of the major projects, including the platform programs, where the project came in under budget. There were other projects that we had an assumed schedule for the implementation of the project that didn't play out over the course of the next 18 months as anticipated. In our expenditure-based capital program, we're able to adjust the schedules through each updated program cycle and sort of recalibrate expectations. So through the first quarter in FY23, we're right on forecast. So that $2.4 billion at this point, one quarter through the year is a reasonable target.
Yeah, just as budgets are strained and, people look at this very closely. So that's very helpful information to have. So thank you.
Tracy.
Yeah, it certainly looks like the fire hydrant is fully open here. And so, I can think off the top of my head of a lot of other agencies that cannot deliver capital programming like this. And so I just want to commend you and your team because, at the end of the day, it's really easy to assume that the reason that, capital projects don't happen is because of money. But there is so much more to it than that. And so we are lucky to have a team that can get the dollars out the door and get the work done. That said, I think it is important to help normal people understand what this money is going towards and what they're getting for it. So I particularly liked the little poster that you guys made about the platform improvement project. Really cute. We should literally be showing this poster inside the system as like on our displays to show riders what we're spending this money on. But we should also be disseminating this to all kinds of stakeholders. Like, don't just put it on the slide. Make sure we get this in front of everyone. We should have things like this for more kinds of capital projects, just to help people understand in everyday terms what the billions are all about, really, and what the return on that spend is. Could you give an example of what a capital project that falls under the category of business and operations support?
Yes, the building we're sitting in is one.
Okay.
That's a large one from FY22, but it also is our operations support and financial support, business support software, a lot of IT projects, things like roof rehabilitation across the facilities, whether they're bus or rail, sort of grouped in within that category.
Okay, that's super helpful just because it is such a big category. But yeah, that's all kinds of important things. Okay, so yeah, I think finally what I would suggest, my final suggestion is that we need to think bigger than ribbon cuttings in terms of how the media are our partners in communicating the successes of the capital program. We should really be inviting the media literally in more to see what this money is going towards and what it's accomplishing. I really had fun waving the confetti things at the platform improvement project ribbon cutting, but this isn't about me having fun waving confetti, and I think there's a lot more we could be doing with the media as partners to show our region what the return on this investment is and how and why we're spending all of this money.
Ms. Klein.
Thanks. Just a quick question. I've been hearing from other transportation agencies that the impact of rising inflation has been much more significant than one might think just from the numbers on paper. Perhaps because the cost of construction materials is, I don't know, maybe rising faster than other products. How significant a risk is that for this program? If you could, obviously you don't know what's going to happen with inflation in the future, but at this moment, how significant do you feel that is?
So in general, and then I'll let Andy jump in here too, there are substantial increases relative to our baseline estimates as a result of inflation and other cost escalation. Again, in part due to the support of dedicated funding, we've been able to start budgeting contingency in projects, which is not a practice that Metro used to have. So contingency does help deal with some of that inflation growth, but we're seeing levels now that are high, that it is a real risk in terms of overall capacity. Again, not so much in the immediate term, but overall capacity investment in the 6-year period.
No, and just from a practical perspective, I mean, clearly, costs, particularly raw material, steel, sheet metal, copper, upwards 15 to 20% increases in the past 18 months, just labor in and of itself. Some of the contracts we have right now, basically progressive design build, where we enter into a contract with a design builder, but we don't have a firm construction price. So we have been working to get to a guaranteed maximum price as quickly, as efficiently as we can, because we know that, I mean, the builders are updating their bids, on a weekly basis as prices increase. So it certainly is a risk. We are starting to see it level out a little bit, which is positive, but certainly a challenge that I think we've worked through pretty well to this point.
Great, thank you. Something to keep an eye on, obviously. Thank you.
Yeah, and it isn't just material costs, it's just labor shortages in general, which are causing project delays. I was at a finance committee meeting for the Loudoun Board of Supervisors. We do a quarterly capital update. Mine was Tuesday. I was just flipping through while you were talking. I think 13 Loudoun County projects have new delays, and just in this one report, and that's just one, so to your point, it's a real challenge to do this. Any other questions or comments? Randy?
I just wanted a little follow-up on that. And what makes it particularly challenging, I think, for us as an industry, and I know this really frustrates the average customer, as you said, board member, a normal person, they'll say, why can't you do this faster? And so you get into the really complicated work that we do, say like signaling. You can't make a signal engineer overnight. And we have significant aging workforce in our industry. And at the same time, we have the largest capital program in the history of Metro. So does New York, so does Boston, so does San Francisco, so does LA, a place like I just left, on and on and on. And then the IIJA jumps in and puts that on steroids across every part of infrastructure. So Dulles has its projects, there's highway projects, there's BWI just announced a big, so there's only so many human beings that can do certain technical craft, right? And so we're kind of competing against ourselves if we do too much of the same thing. So we have to really be careful of how do we prioritize the best ROI per project over which piece of time. And the team and I have already had some conversations about that. So it's not just the outages, it's supply chain, where are you going to get the right technical people? Do you kind of maintain the system we got to figure out how we're going to modernize at the same time? So there's just a lot of parts and pieces. So, and it's really challenging, I think, in 2022, where the public just expects instantaneous on everything. Because our world, you watch CSI, and in 30 seconds you solve the case. And then people go to, someone will go, I was in Hong Kong or Singapore, and they have this beautiful, amazing automated trains. And it's like, yeah, well, they built that way brand new. So we're retrofitting things. So just given that clarity, and I think to your point, board member, we have to continue leading the communication strategies. You see one of the members of the media is in the audience today. We had him down underneath the river to see the complexity of that project, because we got to figure out ways that average people can see how complicated this stuff is, and that our staff is actually really doing an amazing job of delivering. So we're going to be leaning into that very, very heavily.
If it makes you feel better, Randy, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, if you're doing a traffic signal project with VDOT, start to finish, minimum time is 3 years. I've had one go 6 years. That's one single traffic signal at one single intersection. That's how long that stuff takes. So if you think about what we're doing.
Seems like you're advocating for roundabouts.
Oh, that's a whole other. All right, let me turn it over to Chair Smedberg. Well, actually, first we need to adjourn this committee meeting with no further business coming before the committee, and I will turn it over to Chair Smedberg, who has a request that the board meet in executive session.
Thank you, Mr. Letourneau. In accordance with the bylaws, I, Paul Smedberg, request that the Board of Directors convene an executive session to discuss the following matters pursuant to Article 2, Paragraph 9, subsections A, budgetary matters that may affect legal positions, WMATA contracts, or sensitive relationships with local jurisdictions or the federal government, and C, personnel or labor issues, including discussions of labor contracts and labor negotiations, consideration or interviews of candidates for employment, and the assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, or resignation of individuals, and D, contractual or other matters involving confidential or proprietary concerns and the investment of public funds where discussion in public would adversely affect the financial interest of WMATA, and F, safety and security matters where premature release would compromise public safety. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Deputy Mayor Babers. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you for being here.